Greetings to you. I am Minister Louis Farrakhan, National Representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that great preacher of freedom, justice, and equality to the black man and woman of America and the Western Hemisphere and the aboriginal people of the earth, the eternal leader of the nation of Islam, and a warner to the government and people of the United States of America and the nations of the earth. My dear brothers and sisters, once again, it is my great honor, privilege, and pleasure to come before you again on week 22 of the time and what must be done. For the last few weeks, we have been dealing with the subject of the synagogue of Satan. During this critical time, when the old world is going out and a new world is coming in, we must be acquainted with the anti-Semitism move the accused from speaking or writing the truth and into legal jeopardy. What is a legal mechanism by which these attack dogs of the synagogue of Satan activate the governmental apparatus to seek out, punish, and destroy those that are labeled as anti-Semites or a hate group, and destroy their right to free speech in the process? We want to look at the criminal effect of being labeled anti-Semitic and how these private Jewish organizations who do the labeling, like the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center, manipulate the government, law enforcement agencies like the FBI and the IRS to target and harass those who are so labeled, and then how they work to affect their scheming with the disproportionate number of members of the Jewish community in the United States court system as DAs or district attorneys or federal and state prosecutors and judges, where these cases will ultimately be tried. It begins with someone, anyone, who holds a controversial view and speaks or writes about it in public. Controversial means contrary to the popular version of the truth. Instead of engaging in honest and open public dialogue and debate about the issue that the person raises, as is called for and encouraged by the United States Constitution, private interest groups start with the labeling, "He's a hate teacher," with a hateful message. And then the group he belongs to, if they don't repudiate the spokesperson fast enough, they get called a hate group that promotes intolerance. They don't have to prove it. They just have to say it over and over again. Then the drum beats get amplified by their brethren who control the media. And if that person does not apologize quick enough after that, they start to pick away at his supporters and those who would defend that person if they are not strong enough to stand up to the slander. They begin to fall away and distance themselves, and some may even start repudiating and apologizing for their former friend and ally. Still, if they refuse to bow down, they connect certain inflammatory terms that are intended to generate real hatred and even retribution against the person who is speaking these controversial points. They start with, he hates, he's intolerant, and that escalates to, he's threatening, and he incites hatred in others. And then the word violence gets thrown in, and then hate crimes are mentioned, and ultimately you hear the word domestic terrorism. This is all calculated to get the public to put so much pressure on that individual that they and their supporters relent, apologize, and retreat. And this is why I say to my great brothers and sisters in the Twitter army, no matter what vile speech comes at you, no matter what threats are made against my life by those who hate the truth that we are speaking, never ever get down in the gutter or threaten anyone with violence, because they are building a record of what we are saying. So if you threaten anyone with violence, or you act like you wish to do them evil because they desire to do me evil, then one day you might hear this again in a court of law. If we continue to stand on our principles and exercise our freedom of speech, these members of the synagogue of Satan then get their brethren in the judicial branch of government and in the IRS, and their brethren in the Congress and the Senate, and even up to the White House or the Justice Department, and they begin to act in a conspiratorial manner to charge, condemn, and try and punish and even kill those who are so charged. This government persecution of individuals and groups who speak boldly about the wrongs in American society was started under J. Edgar Hoover's FBI counterintelligence program. That program was exposed, and it was said that certain controls were put on the activity of the FBI, but yet those wicked policies still continue even up to this very moment. Of course, the synagogue of Satan stepped in to reestablish the worst of Hoover's illegal operations. Under President Clinton, federal surveillance of those labeled hate groups was restricted to those who committed or were linked to actual crimes. His Attorney General, Janet Reno, said, quote, "It is important that you not focus on a group unless you have a reasonable indication that they are engaged in criminal conduct," close quote. But then 29 Jewish leaders led by Abraham Foxman went to the Justice Department and told them, "This is too timid an approach. We want better surveillance and infiltration if necessary," Foxman said. The concern, he said, was modernizing the regulations so federal authorities can deal not only with getting the man, but with preventing the crime. So now they have their way. They actually got them to create a position in the Justice Department which they say is to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. A few days ago, Secretary of State John Kerry appointed a man named Ira Foreman to that position. He's now called the new Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. What will his role be in this position, except to coordinate the government surveillance and infiltration of those who have been labeled anti-Semitic? There are real anti-Semites in this country that hate the Jewish people, and there is nothing wrong with monitoring a real anti-Semitic hate group. But when you have that intention for me and the nation of Islam, then we have to charge you and challenge you to prove your claim. You have a long history of lying on the nation of Islam, and it is time that we throw down the gauntlet now and make you come before the American people and the world and prove your charge. And if you cannot, and you cannot, then you're going to have to pay for all these years that you have poisoned the minds of the American people, destroyed progress of tens of hundreds and thousands of people, and you thought you got away with it. Not today. Well, in 1942, a secret anti-defamation league of B'nai B'rith file titled Temple of Islam Infiltration states that, quote, a Negro employed by us here is the Anti-Defamation League, proved, quote, quite instrumental in an FBI raid on the Chicago mosque, resulting in 82 arrests. So this has been going on a long time. And what did you mean, Mr. Foxman, when you said Louis Farrakhan is the only African American leader? Your words exactly, sir. The last time an African American leader stood up to anti-Semitism was Martin Luther King Jr., who said it's a sin. The only leadership that now exists in that community, the African American community, is Louis Farrakhan. Farrakhan can assemble 20,000 people several times a year, and he flaunts his anti-Semitism, and what's worse, they deny it exists, so there's no one to talk to, close quote. I interpret that as meaning the Nation of Islam and Louis Farrakhan are the only ones that we don't control. I interpret that to mean that Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam may very well be the last man standing in the way of your successful capture of black leaders, your successful capture of black professionals, your capture of black artists, your capture of black professionals, your capture of black businessmen, your capture of heads of state and government that bow to your commands. Then, if we are the last man standing, then you are calling on all of your forces to concentrate their attention on Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. Well, concentrate with everything you've got. because the God that we serve will answer effectively and efficiently and will ultimately destroy your power. Look at what's written in the Holy Quran in the 4th surah or chapter, the 112th verse. It reads, "And whoever commits a sin commits it only against himself, and Allah is ever knowing and wise. And whoever commits a fault or a sin, then accuses of it one who is innocent, he indeed takes upon himself the burden of a calumny and a manifest sin." There's another verse that I will read, but I want to stop on that one for a moment. Now, a calumny is the making of a false and defamatory statement in order to damage someone's reputation. It's slander, it's character assassination, it's vilification. You are the sinner. Anti-Defamation League, Southern Poverty Law Center, Synagogue of Satan. You want to put your evil on an innocent man. You say, "I am the hater." You're wrong. We can prove that you are the hater, and you've been the hater of us ever since you've been on our planet. You are the liar. You are the one that is creating violence and hatred. It is you. You manipulate your media brethren, turning them into tools of your wicked ideas and policies. Well, now your day has come. Woe to the slanderer, the Quran says, to every slanderer and defamer who amasses wealth. And what will make thee know what the great and utter destruction is? It is a fire in the heart of the slanderer that leads that slanderer to the fire of hell. Look at another verse in the Quran. It says, "And were it not for Allah's grace on thee and his mercy, a party of them certainly designed to ruin thee, and they ruin only themselves, and they cannot harm thee in any way. And Allah has revealed to thee the book and the wisdom, and taught thee what thou knewest not, and Allah's grace on thee is very great." I rely on the wisdom of that scripture, because this synagogue of Satan, which is comprised, as I said last week, not only of members of the Jewish community, but you have Gentiles, you have blacks, you have Asians. Oh, your synagogue is big. And a lot of the people that are members of the synagogue are unwitting pawns in the wicked game of this satanic group. Well, remember these words of the Quran: a party, and that's you, from among them, certainly designed to ruin thee. Thee here means Muhammad. Thee here means what he represents. And if you don't think that I am a part of Muhammad, then watch and see. Your evil is designed to ruin me and to ruin the nation of Islam, but you ruin only yourself. So keep on planning and watch what happens to you and what you represent. Well, let us look at all the black leaders that have been charged with anti-Semitic behavior because they dared to utter a word of criticism against Jewish misbehavior and mislabeling. Let's take a look at who is anti-Semitic. I bet you won't even believe this. Booker T. Washington, the founder of Tuskegee University, W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, yes, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the man that said anti-Semitism is a sin. You all referred to him at one point as an anti-Semite. Malcolm X, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, President Nelson Mandela, Bishop Desmond Tutu, Julian Bond, Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, Andrew Young, Kwesi Nkrumah, former member of Congress and former leader of the NAACP, the Reverends Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Joseph Lowry, the Nonviolent Coordinating Committee called SNCC, the Black Panthers, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which was Mr. Garvey's movement, the Nation of Islam. But it doesn't stop there. They accuse Mahatma Gandhi of being an anti-Semite. Historian John Hope Franklin, historian J.A. Rogers, writer James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Julius Lester, Alice Walker, entertainer Michael Jackson, Spike Lee, Ice Cube, Arsenio Hall, Muhammad Ali, Public Enemy, Oprah Winfrey. This is just a few. Look at the great company that Louis Farrakhan is in. You mean everybody is a hater of the Jewish people? Stop it. Well, look at those white people that you have called anti-Semitic. Let's call the roll. Harry Truman, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. These are presidents. President Richard M. Nixon, President Jimmy Carter, President Gerald Ford, President George H.W. Bush, and our current president, Barack Obama, H.L. Mencken, George Bernard Shaw, Henry Adams, H.G. Wells, Edgar Degas, T.S. Eliot, Immanuel Kant, Tacitus, Philostratus, Cicero, Shakespeare, Voltaire, Hitler, Edward VIII, Alexander Pushkin, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Richard Wagner, Bobby Fischer, and the Reverend Billy Graham. These members of the synagogue of Satan have always known that a day of reckoning was coming. So over time, they put themselves in positions of power in every nation of the Western Hemisphere. And this was done to monitor the awakening of the Gentiles, the masses of so-called heathens, savages, and goyim, and the masses of blacks. So anyone that rises and criticizes, they put fear in them by charging them with being anti-Semitic, even if they knew that what we were saying is the truth. Most would be afraid and would not stand up under the heat of Jewish power. Well, today we are calling you out and asking you to use your inordinate power because the God that we represent wants to crush you and your power. He's here to bring in a brand new world, and he's chosen the despised and the rejected, unloved and unwanted black man and woman of America to be the cornerstone of a brand new reality. Miss Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! On Link TV, one of the finest television stations that we have in America, is Link TV. Check it out. Amy Goodman was interviewing former Israeli minister Shulamit Aloni. Listen to Miss Goodman's words introducing her guest. She said, quote, "Yours is a voice of criticism we don't often hear in the United States. Often when there's dissent expressed in the United States against policies of the Israeli government, people here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?" And Minister Shulamit Aloni said, quote, "Well, it's a trick. We always use it. When from Europe somebody's criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. And when in this country people are criticizing Israel, then they are called anti-Semitic. And the organization is strong and has a lot of money, and the ties between Israel and the American Jewish establishment are very strong. And they are strong in this country. They are talented people, and they have power and money and the media and other things. And their attitude is, quote, Israel, my country, right or wrong. And they are not ready to hear criticism. And it's very easy to blame people who criticize certain acts of the Israeli government as anti-Semitic, and to bring up the Holocaust and the suffering of the Jewish people, and that is to justify everything we do to the Palestinians. This anti-Semitic labeling is a trick that they use. But look at how many people have been destroyed on account of such a trick. Where did you learn such tricks? Did you not learn this from your father Yaqub, who taught you a system of tricks and lies? Look at how easy it is for you to lie and put your wickedness on innocent persons. Well, what is the meaning of a trick? A cunning or skillful act or scheme intended to deceive or outwit someone, a mischievous practical joke, a skillful act performed for entertainment or amusement, an illusion, a clever or particular way of doing something. It's really amusing to Satan when he can tell a lie and we operate on that lie and act in a manner that we would never act if we had only known the truth. They are entertained by playing tricks on unsuspecting, ignorant people. And this is why it is an imperative that the synagogue of Satan must be called out, and Satan and his synagogue must be made known. Well, they've been saying for a long time, they've been trying to get a dialogue with me. We've been trying for 30 years to have an intelligent dialogue with members of the Jewish community. And we have had at least 4 or 5 wonderful meetings, frank discussions. And I wondered to myself if they thought that because we got along so well when we spoke with each other, that I should stop saying what I say because we had lunch together or we spoke together. Are you that blind, deaf, dumb, and ignorant that you would think that a little luncheon with me would stop me from speaking the truth?
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his servant and messenger. I greet you, my beloved brothers and sisters, in the greeting words of peace. We say it in the ancient tongue of Arabic. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, 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 dear beloved family, brothers, sisters, and regular viewers of the Imagination Show. My name is Brother Leo Muhammad, and sitting alongside me is my beloved wife, my beloved friend, my beloved sister, Sister Claudia Muhammad.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I greet you all in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I pray to Allah that you are all safe and well. Thank you so much for joining us again for another edition of the Imagination Show.
Praise be to Allah, beloved. Wonderful to see you.
Praise be to us likewise.
Sisters just coming off the road again. Wonderful to have once again this beautiful opportunity, dear family, to speak with you, to conduct yet another episode of the Imagination Show. I'm drinking some hot sort of ginger tea right now because I got a little tickle in my throat. Not 100% sure what's going on, maybe because of the change of the weather, chilly, whatever. But yes. You know, we should be fine, inshallah. It's certainly not as difficult as Hyde Park. You know, in Hyde Park, I wish I could speak like this in Hyde Park, but the problem with Hyde Park is that, you know, one has to raise one's voice to be heard because there's a lot of people. Generally, there's a lot of noise. Of course, I'm sure some of you have seen there's a lot of hecklers, you know, people who, some of them are paid hecklers. They come there specifically to try to make enough noise to detract from the message that we're trying to give. And so we have to speak at such a high volume for such a long period of time that oftentimes, you know, the voice absolutely disappears and goes. And by the time I'm finished and I get home, I've got no voice left.
No, it's even deeper.
Well, my wife says she likes my voice after Hyde Park because it's deeper. It's deep. So praise be to Allah. But it is wonderful to be here once again, family. It's a wonderful blessing. We never ever take it for granted that from one week to the next that we will be here, because tomorrow is not promised to any of us. Right. Could you just straighten that for me, please, beloved? Tomorrow is not promised to any of us. And, you know, in reality, each day that goes by, we are losing, you know, brothers and sisters, we're losing people. Right. I'm sure you're all aware that James Earl Ray Jones recently passed away, our great acting brother, who, you know, is the voice of Darth Vader, is the voice of Mufasa in The Lion King. He's played so many fantastic roles. He's a great voiceover artist because of that magnificent voice. We've also recently lost our great brother, Frankie Beverly from Maze, that fantastic group, Maze, Frankie Beverly and Maze. And, you know, that's the nature of life, dear family. Allah gives life and he causes death. And, you know, we shouldn't be unduly twisted or upset about this. It's a natural cycle. It's a process. And every one of us has our appointment with that destiny. Nobody can get out of this life alive. Okay, so let's just put it into context and appreciate each and every moment, each and every day that we are blessed to live on Almighty God Allah's earth and in His universe. Go ahead, sister.
Just going to add to say happy 71st wedding anniversary to the Honourable Minister Louis Farrakhan and Mother Khadija.
Praise be to
Farrakhan,
Allah.
71 years.
71 years of marriage.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, we're aiming.
Yes, inshallah.
That's a wonderful target,
Yes.
isn't it?
And what two wonderful role models to
Yes,
have
they
in
are.
our lives. You know, it's a
Absolutely,
blessing.
family.
Absolutely.
And we do need such role models because I think I've said it before, you know, the institution of marriage is something that appears to be dying, especially in the Black community. And that's a very dangerous thing to be happening, because we need to be marrying one another as Black people, and we need to be rebuilding the Black family, the Black community, and ultimately the Black nation. And when I say Black nation, I'm talking about a nation without borders.
That's right.
Okay, so that wherever we are on the planet, we recognize our family.
That's right.
And so, brothers and sisters, at this time, please call a friend, a relative, a loved one. Let them know that the Imagination Show has started. We are live on Zoom and live on YouTube. And also, brothers and sisters, please, you know, hit that thumbs up button, that like button, so that those of you who are on here, you are contributing to the growth and the development of the show, because those likes, they actually affect what they call the algorithms of the show. And what it demonstrates is that I just realized that my computer screen was actually in the way of the camera. What it demonstrates is that you know, there are people who are tuned in, and it promotes the show and it helps the show to grow. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and please share what we share with you. Pass it on to, you know, loved ones and family members, so that they too can benefit from some of the life-giving teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as taught and exemplified by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. This is the basis of what we do on the Image a Nation show. We try to look at contemporary reality, contemporary things that are going on in the world, and then we use the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a sieve to put what's going on through. And then if whatever we find is congruent with the truth of what he teaches and what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan exemplifies, then we will share it. And if it's not, then we will condemn it, and we will expose it, and we will, to the best of our ability, tell the truth about what's going on our planet. So, dear family.
So
go ahead.
Robinson Benjamin said, correction, beloved, it's James Earl Jones.
James Earl Ray. What did I say? What did I say? Yeah, I think I was mixing him up with somebody, but I got the name wrong. But thank you. Thank you, Robinson. Dear Robinson. What we are taught is that mistakes shall not exist in the Nation of Islam. So when we make a mistake, especially when we make a mistake in the public, we should never, ever be reticent or reluctant in making a correction. So thank you, dear beloved family, for that. I'm very grateful to you. Right, let's have a look.
Let's have a look what you got for us this evening.
Where we are, yeah. I've been really struggling, honestly. It's just some of these subject matters, they're very difficult because of the abundance of material that one has to sift through in order to find a particular angle or a thrust that we're going to approach the story from. So I must admit, this one has been pretty difficult, but inshallah, we pray that Allah will bless us to make sense. So, as always, we say, Welcome to episode 147 of the Image a Nation show. Today is Thursday, September the 12th, 2024. And our subject is September the 11th, 2001, a foundation on deception. A foundation, the word on, I could have put there, built on deception. But September the 11th, 2001 represents a foundational stone of something that happened that from that day forward, dear family, based on what happened on that day, it is my contention that we have been massively, grotesquely deceived, and that deception has only built from that moment on to the present day. And that, we must be aware of the nature of such a deception, what it was designed to do, what foundation it represents or stands under, what has been built on top of that foundation, in order that we do not fall foul of the purpose of the deception, and that we, having been able to see the deception and expose the deception, we can actually kill such deception with manifesting the truth. And so that's what today's episode is all about. And I pray that you will be able to follow along with us and appreciate the importance of this particular subject this week. Sister Claudia,
I haven't got anything to say.
is my badge spinning?
Yeah.
My national is moving around. Okay, so let us begin our presentation with a few opening questions and remarks from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that clearly shows that there is far more to the 2001 9/11 story than what the people of the world have been misled to believe by the mainstream media, the politicians, and other deep state actors who are behind the international banking systems, corrupt governments, and the military industrial complex of the Western world. You see, dear family, I said the deep state actors. There are people who operate behind the scenes who are so powerful that they literally control international banking, that they have the wherewithal and the power to be able to corrupt whole governments, to corrupt their leaders and to corrupt their systems to the degree where that government is not acting on behalf of its people, but that government is actually acting on behalf of this oligarchy or this cabal of nefarious actors or nefarious players. And not only that, brothers and sisters, but they control and they run the military industrial complex. We live in a world today which is a world that has been militarized, which is a world that is built on warfare and conquest and the destruction of indigenous people and landowners in order for this world to dominate the planet. This is the mode of operation that has been used. It's been a military campaign from start to finish. It has been bloodthirsty and it's caused tremendous pain. Now, I've said it before, let me say it again for you. But the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our leader, teacher, and guide, the man that we believe today is the exalted Christ of the scripture. This is how we see him. This is what we believe. This is what we know. This man has taught us, and he has been echoed by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, whose mind is one with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad he teaches us that for every 1,000 years that the Caucasian has been on our planet, and for those of you who don't know, he's only been here 6,000 years. The Bible characterizes it as 6 days. Okay, he's a 6-day-old child. He is 6,000 years old, and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that for every 1,000 years of his existence on our planet, he has killed 100 million Black people, or non-Caucasian or non-white people. This is his record. This is actual facts. This is his history, which is written in the blood of the Black, the brown, the yellow, the red, and all of the indigenous people. This is his nature. This is his character. And those of us who are desperate to make excuses for him, you will never, ever be able to justify his behavior, his mode of operation, his way of life, because you got to understand, dear family, that he was put here for a particular purpose, which very much involves us and teaching us something about ourselves, because he doesn't come in a vacuum. He came from us. We produced him, but he was produced from us for a reason, to teach us something about ourselves, that we must never, ever allow that side or that part of ourselves to ever come up to the fore again and take rulership or to take charge of this life. This is the purpose of his existence. And so, brothers and sisters, family, let's listen to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
I want you to pay attention to this. I said on November 25th, 2009, 9/11 was done by people in our own government and our own banking system to perpetuate the fear in the American people so that they might subordinate themselves so that the government may get them to do whatever they want us to do. And this was to create this endless war on terror. But the war on terror is a cover and a fraud for the real war, which is a war against Islam. In 2001, we experienced the horrific events of 9/11, but there are many who are saying that the official government version of events is not what really happened. As recently as this month, the Republican candidate in the Texas gubernatorial race, her name is Deborah Medina, publicly said on the Glenn Beck show, quote, "I think some very good questions have been raised. In that regard, there's some very good arguments. And I think the American people have not seen all the evidence there." But she quickly backed off of what she said. Now, listen to this. Why is it, these are questions about 9/11. I compiled them, but they're compiled by people who are scientists, who studied this. Why is it that the FBI's most wanted poster of Osama bin Laden mentions other crimes, but not 9/11? Right before 9/11, unusually high levels of quote-unquote put options were placed on the stocks of American and United Airlines and corporate tenants of the World Trade Center. Put options are market bets that give the bettor a profit if the stock goes down. According to Bloomberg Business News, quote, "This would be one of the most extraordinary coincidences in the history of mankind if it was a coincidence." Many people got rich by the bets that they made that the stock in American and United Airlines would go down.
Are you listening, family? Are you listening? The two airline companies that were the principal airline companies involved on 9/11, United Airlines and American Airlines, these were people were putting put options, betting on the stock market that their shares would fall prior to what happened on 9/11. Meaning that when those airplanes crashed into those buildings, all of a sudden those people were making big time money. I just want us to appreciate just how wicked the system is that we are dealing with, and don't ever talk about a system like it's a thing that's just floating somewhere, and not appreciate that all systems flow from people. All systems flow from men. And this particular system that we're talking about is a satanic system where you have satanic people who run such a system.
How did they know? How was the FBI able to release a list and photos of the hijackers within hours? Why have at least 5 of the 19 alleged hijackers turned up alive and well, living in Saudi Arabia? And if the perpetrators were from Arabia, why are we fighting in Afghanistan and in Iraq? Well, they say because Osama bin Laden was living in Afghanistan. The president of that country, Mullah Omar, when President Bush said that Osama bin Laden was guilty, and he dictated to Mullah Omar that they should turn over Osama bin Laden to the United States government and its authorities. And Mullah Omar said to President Bush, "Show me the proof that Osama bin Laden did this, and we will turn him over to you." President Bush, with his arrogant self, said, "We're not negotiating with you. Turn him over or else."
See, the leader of the Taliban asked them for evidence. Just show us the evidence. We'll hand the man over if you have evidence to show that he was involved. And if you remember what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan pointed out before, that on the wanted list for Osama bin Laden posted by the FBI, there was no mention of 9/11. You see, they mention all these other crimes that he supposedly had committed, but you would imagine that 9/11 would be the chief among them. That would be the biggest thing, you know. But it's not even mentioned. Why? Because it was an oversight in that they knew very well that Osama bin Laden had nothing to do with 9/11. Hence why it wasn't a part of his crime sheet, so to speak. You see, but this was part of the deception that was being played on the public, whereby on 9/11 itself, there were people already using the name of Osama bin Laden to explain what people had just witnessed on their television screens with those buildings on fire and those buildings smoking and those planes going into those buildings and those buildings coming down. Dear family, let's hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Now, what is America doing in Afghanistan? Trying to buy off the warlords? Boy, this is a sick people, man. You bomb them and laugh. Now they're kicking your behind, and now you trying to buy the allegiance of these people? Don't you know with a $25 million price on Osama bin Laden's head, why haven't somebody delivered him?
And just remember, you know, after over 20 years of them being in Afghanistan, it was 3.5 years ago when Biden came to the office when they were literally running out of Afghanistan, okay, having lost to the Taliban after they'd slaughtered how many hundreds of thousands of innocent Afghans. They were running out of Afghanistan, leaving over 80 million. Trump is very upset over the fact that they left over $80 billion worth of armaments and military equipment in that country. I mean, just think about, you know, these nations, these Western nations, America and Britain in particular, but just think about, you know, they're leaving over 80 billion worth of equipment, military armaments in Afghanistan. They're busy supplying all of these weapons to Ukraine. They're busy supplying all of these weapons and bombs and planes to Israel. They were busy supplying all of these armaments and weapons to Saudi Arabia when Saudi Arabia was being instigated to destroy the Yemeni people. They were instrumental in arming Saddam Hussein and also giving Saddam, by the way, chemical weapons when he was ready to attack Iran and try to kill the Iranian people. That war that went on for, I think, between 8 and 10 years, and where over 1 million young men lost their lives. You know, just think about this, a system like this, that they're so weaponized. They're so wedded to their armaments and their weapons and their killing machines that, you know, one of the definitions for Satan is that his evil is not confined to himself. You see? So he's got to spread it all over the planet, and whoever he can compromise and get them to do his bidding, then he is happy to do that. I hope you are listening carefully, family, because I think I said this last week, I'm going to say it, you know, we make a tremendous mistake when we fail to recognize who the devil is, who Satan is, who the enemy is. And that lack of understanding or recognition can literally and will literally cost us our very lives.
See, to some people, money is not the answer.
Just to pick up on that, because what the minister was saying was that they put out these big rewards, you see, offering, money if anybody would turn in Osama bin Laden. But, these Islamic people, these people in Afghanistan, they didn't fall for that. They said, to hell with you and your money. But you see, some of us, we'll take that 30 pieces of silver, you see, to betray our brother, to betray our sister, to betray our nation, to betray our people, you see. And I'm saying, Black people, Africans, indigenous people, original people, you got to stop this, man, because you will pay a very, very grievous price for this willingness to take pieces of silver, or even worse, paper, fiat money that's backed by nothing, or trinkets, cars and jewelry or houses or, you know, whatever, to sell out your own people, man, and cause your own people to be destroyed. We got to stop this. Sister Claudia, could you just take that round the corner for me, please? And I'll get in. Thank you. My battery on my computer is about to die. It's just there. Okay. So you know, I didn't want to. I don't like to. I never like to interrupt the Honourable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but because I'd been talking and he just came back in on that a little bit, I wanted to make sure that you knew what he was talking about.
People, don't you know, with a $25 million price on Osama bin Laden's head, why haven't somebody delivered him? See, to some people, money is not the answer. Listen, how, these are questions, how could these alleged hijackers have known that multiple classified air defense drills were planned for the morning of 9/11, leaving only 2 fighter jets available to protect the entire northeastern United States?
Come on, man. Think about that. How is it, dear family, that on 9/11, on the very day, 9/11, 2001, not one, not two, but multiple drills were being carried out at the same time as this so-called attack on America was taking place, to the point and to the degree where all of their fighter jets were elsewhere, occupied elsewhere. And I mean, I don't cover it in this presentation this evening, but even to the point where when certain things had happened and certain planes were so-called hijacked, then you had military personnel talking to one another, which they've got recordings of this, and they're asking one another, is this real world or is this a drill? Because they're confused now, because there was all these different military drills going on. And so they didn't know whether this was a real attack or whether it was, which was by design. And they had recently changed the rules whereby the person who was in overall authority on September the 11th, 2001, was the Vice President, Dick Cheney, and he was the only one who could make any kind of determination as to what was real and what was fake. And he was incommunicado. I mean, family, honestly, I hope we understand, because you see, it's been 22 years, and I know that for a lot of us, oh man, that's ancient history. That's long forgotten in the weeds. See, and that's our problem. Again, one of the things that we learned, somebody said this, one of the things that we've learned about Black people and history is that Black people don't learn from history.
That's right.
And those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat that history. You see, and we may think, oh, that's done and dusted. It's not done and dusted, family. And you got to understand what it is that you're saying is done and dusted. This is the most grievous thing that took place in the brand new 21st century that we had just entered into, 2001. And it has set the trend now for where we are in 2024 and where we might end up before the end of this year or into next year in terms of a third World War. Make no mistake, the Honourable Minister Louis Farrakhan's already told us the Third World War has already begun. See, so those of you who are waiting for the war to start, no, it's already started. And I've got to say this to Black people. See, because again, we seem like we really think that we're just a civilian people, looking for the next party, looking for the next dance, looking for some comfort and some ease, but that's our thought process. No, dear family, we are a people at war. There are people right now planning our death. They're planning mine, definitely. But they're planning all of our death generally. Understand this. You're not dealing with some lightweight demon here. You're dealing with the enemy, the devil, the Satan of our scriptures. And this is all linked and all of it is connected. And we've got to start joining the dots. I hope you get it.
How did Osama know that? So then who planned the drills on that morning that no fighter jets were there to intercept these planes?
Because remember, you see, in all of these capital cities or whatever, they got rules, they got protocols whereby you can't just fly anywhere you want to fly over London, or fly anywhere you want to fly over New York, or fly anywhere you want to fly over Washington and these places. No, man, there are protocols that if they can't identify what that vehicle is, what that flying object is, immediately warplanes are scrambled. It's a protocol, you see? And if it's something that they can shoot down, it's going to get shot down. Or it's going to be forced to land somewhere. But on this particular occasion, on one of the biggest events in American history of a so-called terrorist attack, all of a sudden there were no warplanes, there were no fighter jets that could intercept these planes that had deviated from their course and were now flying in airspace which would normally be restricted, or airspace which would normally be monitored and surveilled to the point where they would have to know exactly what those planes were doing in those areas. Think about it, family. There were drills going on which prevented, and the minister's asking the question, how did Osama bin Laden know that? Did he plan that? How did he execute these drills? Drills that could only be initiated by the American government, by the American military. Wow, wow, wow.
Think about it. Why was Attorney General Ashcroft warned to stop using commercial airlines prior to 9/11?
And it was reported in, I think it was the Daily Mirror back in those days, that several Jews had been warned not to fly on that day and not to go into work in New York on that day. One of the slurs that's used against Jews, one of the anti-Semitic tropes that they like to use that terminology, but one of those that's used is that they refer to New York as Jew York. That's a reality. A lot of people know about that, right? And so a lot of Jews are in New York. Okay, it's the epicenter of a lot of the Jewish activity that takes place in America. But according to that particular report that was in the Mirror, many of them received warnings not to go into work that day. What's going on?
What did they know?
Yeah, what did they know? Who's sending out these warnings to Ashcroft and others? Family, wake up.
Let's go to the Pentagon. How come the hole in the Pentagon was 18 feet across, but the wingspan of a 757 is 146 feet.
Not only that, family, you know, I don't know what you know. I mean, I don't know a great deal about airplanes, but I can assure you, even your car that you've got outside your house right now, your car is probably tougher than the skin of a commercial airline. The material that they're built, it's very soft. The nose of an aircraft is a soft thing. It's not designed to, you know, be mega tough. In fact, you've seen where there've even been bird strikes where the plane is hit, flown into a flock of birds, and the front of the nose cone of the plane is all dented, whatever. They do tremendous damage to just flying into a bird, much less the Pentagon. The Pentagon is a series of rings of reinforced concrete. But when you see the hole, you can see it in the image here. There's a man, there's 18 feet across. It's a round hole, okay? And it penetrates, I think at least three of the rings of the Pentagon complex of the Pentagon. How? Then you can't see no wings, you can't see no tail fin, you can't see no seats, you can't see no undercarriage, wheels. There's nothing of that nature anywhere to be seen. Each of the engines on a 757 weighs more than a Land Rover car. I think there's something like between 3 and 6 tons each. That's the engine. These are not things that just disappear in a crash. You always find the engines. You find all of this. The wheels. You find these things. Nothing whatsoever. What was it that hit the Pentagon, dear family?
On to stop using commercial airlines prior to 9/11. Let's go to the Pentagon. How come the hole in the Pentagon was 18 feet across, but the wingspan of a 757 is 146 feet? Are you listening? How come that little single-engine Piper P.O.W.E.R plane that crashed into the IRS office in Texas did more damage to that building than a 757 jetliner filled with fuel did to the Pentagon? How does a pilot that failed his lessons on a one-engine propeller plane pull off maneuvers that only a highly trained airline pilot could do? A 270-degree turn at 500 miles an hour, descending 7,000 feet in 2.5 minutes into a direct hit.
See, even expert pilots have been interviewed and questioned about the maneuver that this thing that hit the Pentagon was supposed to have made. And the so-called hijacker was one who had been training on this little small plane and was struggling to even land that plane or to properly control that plane. But now they want us to believe that this same novice pilot who was struggling with a single engine Cessna, all of a sudden now could take a 757 passenger airliner and do some impossible maneuvers in order to bring it down to ground level, skim along grass, not touch the grass, by the way, but skim along so low that it hit the Pentagon at the base of its walls. I mean, brothers and sisters, I mean, you know, I hope you're listening. I hope you're following, because again, you see, again, one of the mistakes we make when we watch the news, I think, is that we kind of like, we get entertained. It's sensational, you know, they try and stir up your emotions by telling you what happened, but really, we don't really listen to what they're saying and critique or question. Okay, you said that, but does that make sense? What's the meaning? How do I process what I've just been told? See, we're not necessarily always employing critical thinking. And then what happens is that people, you know, like the minister and others, who will do a deep analysis of what's going on, then the enemy starts to call such persons conspiracy theorists. But because we haven't been taking notice, because we haven't gone beneath the surface of what we've been told, we buy into it. Oh yeah, man, they're paranoid, man. It's a conspiracy. You see, you got to stop it, family. You got to start really, you know, thinking outside of this box that so many of us have been confined to.
He just questions. Why were surveillance videos recording the impact of the Pentagon confiscated by the FBI immediately after the event?
Did you hear that? So imagine the Pentagon. Think about the Pentagon. You know, this is a very, very serious government facility. This is their war-making headquarters. This is the place that controls every United States military base globally. So imagine the kind of surveillance that would be on a building like that. Imagine the cameras that must be set up to watch the building and the cameras that are set up to observe anything around the building, you see? And then you get a good picture of the type of surveillance we're talking about here. Why did the FBI go immediately after this attack and confiscate every single CCTV camera that may have recorded what happened at the Pentagon that day, included private CCTV? All of these, we should be wondering, well, what's going on here? What is going on here? Why would the government do that?
Let's go to Pennsylvania Flight 93. You remember the one that fell into Pennsylvania? There was a big...
And don't forget, I'm going to come back, the minister's going to continue, but don't forget now, see, Flight 93, even that, I mean, they've made movies out of most of what happened on 9/11. But remember, Flight 93, they've even made Hollywood movies on this. And what the Hollywood movie does is that now sinks that even deeper into the consciousness of the people as a truthful rendition of what took place on that day. When you dramatize now, you know, these heroic passengers on the plane fighting these hijackers, and where the plane was maybe supposed to be heading for Washington to go to the White House, to crash into the White House, or heading to some other sensitive place to do damage. But the passengers said, no, we're not having this. And, you know, there's certain of the passengers who, you know, I think one's called Bingham. Bingham is said to have said, you know, let's roll, you know, when they were going to attack these. I mean, you see what they're giving you, family, is mythology. It's fiction, it's drama, but it's designed to so immerse you in the deception, in the lie. Because remember, again, I've said this before, I say it again, your subconscious mind cannot distinguish between fantasy and reality. That's why when we watch movies, we get all involved in the plot and we can find ourselves being emotional. We can find ourselves being afraid. It's only a movie, but that's the power of movies. Not movies because the pictures necessarily move, movies because they move people. You see? So just think about what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is saying here.
Let's go to Pennsylvania, Flight 93. You remember the one that fell into Pennsylvania? There was a big fight on board, you know, and whatnot. You know, look. Why do you all say in church that the devil is a liar? He's the damnedest liar that ever lived. Look. Question. Why was there no visible airplane debris where Flight 93 supposedly crashed in Pennsylvania? Only a smoking hole in the ground, no bodies, no seats, no wings, no luggage. The official story of 9/11 claimed that 10 sinful cell phone calls came from Flight 93, but the technology for airplane to ground cell phone calls didn't exist until 2004. Let's go to the World Trade Center. We're talking about the synagogue of Satan.
Dear family, I hope you're listening. I really do, because, you know, I don't know how long Allah is going to bless us to keep doing this and to keep trying to awaken our people and inform our people. But please don't take it for granted, dear family. We will continue with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's historic presentation in a little while. But in the meantime, let us remind ourselves of some of the gruesome and terrible aspects of what took place on that day 22 years ago, and think about how it was used to restart a never-ending war against Islam. See, because you got to understand, you know, in the 1000s, 1093, they were the Crusades, where Europeans were attacking the so-called Middle East, attacking that part of the world and slaughtering Muslims to try to take over that area of the world. You see, that area of the world is a very strategic and important part of the world in terms of trade routes and all manner of things that exist at the top of Africa there in Northeast Africa. See? And they were attacking Muslims from day one, almost from their inception on the planet. You see? And this, what we're witnessing today, was just a restart of that never-ending war against Islam and innocent Muslim men, women, and children. You know, it shouldn't be lost on you when I say that, what's going on in Palestine today. Because it's never changed. Nothing has changed. And like I said, quoting the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they've been on this killing spree since they've been here. And now this has not abated, and it continues to this day. This picture that's on the screen at the present time illustrates some of the fear and panic that unfolded on 9/11. Look at the faces of these men. Yeah, most of these white men running. But, you know, look at their faces, man. It was a very, very tough day.
Mhm.
Look at the smoke, the clouds, the plumes of dust that's chasing them down the road from this attack on these buildings. It was a very, very heavy, heavy day, dear family. It was, in fact, 8,402 days ago, or 22 years ago,
Wow.
on September the 11th, 2001, that it was reported that 2 passenger airplanes crashed into the World Trade Center buildings in New York. Also, that another jetliner was flown and crashed into the Pentagon complex in Washington, D.C., and that another passenger plane crashed into the ground in a Pennsylvania field after courageous passengers fought with Islamic terrorist hijackers, causing the crash. This is what we have been told. This is how the story unfolded. And I can remember, Sister Claudia, I can remember where I was on the day.
Yes,
Can you remember?
Yes, I was going to pick up the children.
Going to
from
pick up the
hospital.
children. And I remember you came into the living room. I was looking at the TV, and I said, "Look at that!" And there was smoke coming out of one of the towers. Go ahead, go ahead.
And you said, "Don't have any phone calls, conversations on my way to the school."
Yes, don't talk on the telephone, because even at that moment in time, dear family, right at the beginning of this, I knew that this was not some lightweight thing. This was not something to play with. This was something very serious was unfolding before our eyes on that particular day. Now, according to the official story, 19 terrorists from Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial airlines, deliberately crashing 2 of the planes into the upper floors of the north and south towers of the World Trade Center complex, and a 3rd plane into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, while the 4th plane, Flight 93, crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the passengers fought back against the hijackers. Okay, I'm just emphasizing this because you see, the official story is the one that, oftentimes is repeated over and over and over again on the nightly news, on the morning news, in the newspapers, and people are talking about it in the barber shop, and it becomes law. It becomes sacrosanct. It becomes, something that once you determine now that you're going to question it or criticize it, a lot of people immediately begin to push back. They don't have to have any facts or evidence. It's just that they've heard the story so many times that as far as they're concerned, that's what happened. You see, it's an uncritical look at what is being fed to us through a process of propaganda, because again, you may have heard me say before that the news is not news. The news is propaganda, and it's NEWS, north, east, west, south. So in the Holy Quran, Shaitan promises Allah that he's going to come at God's people from before them, from behind them, from their right side and from their left side. In other words, he's going to come from the north, the east, the west, the south. He's going to come from every direction, and he's going to cause the people to deviate from Allah's straight path, from God's way into the way of Satan. See? And this is what you are witnessing when you are seeing this type of so-called news unfold. Dear family, this particular moment, it is said is when President George W. Bush, who was at a school and listening to readings from second grader children, was told that a second plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. And it later emerged that he falsely claimed to have seen when the first plane struck, but he, in fact, had no way of seeing that until later on the television, just like the rest of us. The implication is, you know, like the first thing we saw was the second plane hitting the World Trade Center. We didn't see the first one. It's only later that they showed that. But we saw the building smoking, and they said, well, you know, they think a plane has hit it. But then when they saw the second one hit, this is what this individual is supposed to be whispering into the ear of George Bush. But he turned around and said to somebody when he was talking later that he had seen the first plane go into the first tower. But there's no way of him seeing that until later on the television. The implication is that Bush slipped up when speaking, showing that he had prior knowledge that the despicable acts of 9/11 would take place. It sounds like the recent false claims by Joe Biden of seeing pictures of 40 beheaded babies on October the 7th, 2023, that have been disproved to have never happened. See, imagine, Joe Biden. Yes, I saw pictures of 40 beheaded babies. Family. One baby was killed on the 7th of October, and that was a baby being shot through a door where somebody has just fired a bullet. They don't even know who's on the other side of the door, and that baby was killed. See, but this is the media. This is the news, so-called news media that all of us, or some of us, put a lot of store in. Family, I hope you're all right. I can see quite a few comments.
Well, DJ Mr. P says, I'm not a civil engineer, but how does a tower attack by a plane near the top fall vertically in classic demolition style?
Yes, it's a wonderful question, DJ Mr. P. Wonderful question, my dear brother. And that's the point, you see, because it's like we're literally being taken for fools. We are literally being taken for fools. What happened on 9/11 presented the perfect opportunity for the launch of a well-orchestrated plan by a neoconservative group of warmongers and their project for a new American century. This is what their project was entitled, Project for a New American Century, that was also exposed by General Wesley Clark, who revealed that the stated goal was to attack and topple 7 Middle Eastern / African countries in 5 years. This is what you were looking at on 9/11. This was part of a well-orchestrated plan to initiate attacks on so-called Middle Eastern / African countries that over a period of 5 years, they wanted to topple or destroy, overthrow these governments in these nations, in 7 nations. This was a plan of action, dear family. And again, you know, I could spend a great deal of time showing you, going through all the evidence or whatever. I'm not going to do that. See, I'm saying this is not stuff that's hidden even. So much of what these enemies do, they do in plain sight. But it's for us to start to do studying for ourselves. We must research things for ourselves and find out what's really going on in this world, what's going on around us, family. This was later on in the...
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices. Secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shattered steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, good night, and God bless America.
So let me read it again. What happened on 9/11 presented the perfect opportunity for the launch of a well-orchestrated plan by a neoconservative group of warmongers and their project for a new American century. That's who George W. Bush is working for. Okay, he is a spokesperson now to launch this campaign now that they had long planned. And that was also exposed by General Wesley Clark, who revealed that the stated goal was to attack and topple 7 Middle Eastern / African countries in 5 years. This was the perfect moment having executed this day, 9/11, to now have this president sit in the Oval Office and make this very beautiful, sounding statement, this mild, sincere, talking about God, talking about scriptures, talking about peace and love, talking about, you see, you got to understand how Satan moves. And how many of us at the time would have been listening to this man and thinking, oh man, yeah, man, we got to stand together. What you forget is that before that day, George Bush was being accused as the man who stole the American presidency. And America was divided down the middle because as far as the country was concerned, or half of the country was concerned, he had stolen the election from Al Gore. I think it was Al Gore that he was running against. And it was disputed, and it was the courts that decided that Bush should be the one to become the president. And half of America was absolutely livid, and the country was divided. But this one act on this day, these incidents on this day, brought all of the Americans together. And even the world were in sympathy with America. And this was the play that they put out now. This was the great act of, being the victim. And now they've got no choice now but to really lash out. He's talking about the anger underneath now. I mean, this was like, this was some serious plan that was being executed during this time, dear family. I don't think that many of us can readily appreciate the level and degree of trauma that was inflicted in the hearts and minds of Americans and other members of the human family on that fateful day, and the pain and suffering in the aftermath of the days, weeks, months, and years that have followed, and the changes to all our lives that have resulted from all the new security measures that have been enacted, such as the Homeland Security Acts and other draconian anti-terrorist legislations, new airline rules and travel restrictions, etc. Now you got to take off your shoes before you get on the plane. Now you can't carry a bottle over a particular size.
100 mils.
100 mils of liquid on the plane. I mean, you see, again, do we even appreciate just how draconian and how surveillance-led all of our lives are now, where the government now feels that they have an excuse to be able to spy on all of their citizens. They've been doing it anyway. They were doing it before that anyway. But now, you see, now they can quote or they can cite terrorism. And this is what happened on 9/11. Look at these poor sisters. This was on the day itself. Look at these sisters, man, how traumatized they are. Looking at what was, and Black people. I mean, we get even more affected by these types of things, believe it or not, than other people. We really do. We really do. And our love and our sympathy for others, man, it knows no bounds. It knows no bounds. We have more love and more sympathy for other people than we do for ourselves or for our own kind. September the 11th, 2001 changed everything, showing us images that we could never again unsee. If 19 terrorists from a foreign country were responsible, that would be truly evil and bad enough. But what if the evidence points to the fact that this was in fact an inside job? Just what if? And that the government and secret agencies were the real perpetrators, seemingly hiding in plain sight. Just think about it. What if that's true? Look at this man falling from a building. This is one of the iconic images that came out of that day. People falling from a 110-story building onto concrete, onto tarmac, and being destroyed. I think they did it, they searched and they actually discovered who that man was. Yeah, they found out who he was. falling from the building head first like that. According to what we have been told, 2,977 people died on that day, not to mention the hundreds of thousands who would have been ill affected by the asbestos and concrete dust and other toxic material that covered everything and everyone, and the long-term physical and mental injuries that might never be resolved for those who suffered them. I don't even know if this man is alive or dead, but there were so many images like that on the day. Everything was just covered because the concrete of the buildings had been pulverized. And again, that didn't make any sense, you see, unless there was a particular type of explosive that was used, because concrete will break up and it will fall apart and it will crumble, but it won't be pulverized into the type of dust that was seen on that day without some added ingredient to do that type of pulverization. Dear family, I hope you are good, and I hope you are able to follow what it is that we are sharing with you this evening. Just imagine for a minute that the media and the government want you to disbelieve your lying eyes and accept that two 110-story steel frame buildings and one 47-story steel frame building, all for the first and last time in the history of steel frame buildings, because it's never happened since, it never happened before, and it's never happened since. Okay, so for the first and last time in history of steel frame buildings, all of these three buildings, 210-story and 147-story, all collapsed at free fall speed. You know what that means, family? If you go up onto a high place and you drop a ball, that's the speed that these buildings fell. Free fall. See, but these buildings are steel frame. They got steel running all the way through these buildings. There's no way that the buildings can fall at free fall speed unless the metal columns had been somehow removed in order to allow that building just to fall down straight like that, at that speed. And the only way you can remove those columns in a systematic way to allow such a fall would be to use high explosives. Oh man, they really think we are fools. 47-story steel frame building, all for the first and last time in the history of steel frame buildings, all collapsed at free fall speed into their own footprints. You know what that means? The building fell straight down into it didn't fall over to the side. One part didn't fall off and leave the rest, which is, if something was a natural thing, that's what would happen. Something would topple over, a bit would be left here, a bit would go there. It would be haphazard if it was a natural occurrence where some catastrophic event took place and, the building fell apart. But no, these buildings fell down straight into their own footprint because of jet fuel and office fires. Dear family, I mean, we're going to go a little bit deeper into that in a minute, but, jet fuel, by the way, is like paraffin. It just burns like that, then it goes out. That's it. And if you remember 9/11, see, most of what you was looking at when you was looking at those buildings weren't flames. Initially, when the explosion took place, when the planes hit, there's explosion, there's flames, but then that quickly goes away. Then all you could see was black smoke. What does black smoke represent? It represents that the fires are mostly out and it's just smoldering stuff going on there. So how is it that these flames were so fierce, so hot, that they were able to melt all of that steel, turn it into nothing, so that these buildings could then collapse? I mean, family, I really want you to start thinking. You got to think. Go ahead, Sister Claudia.
Bryn from Zoom said that's what the firemen kept saying. They heard explosives from the
all
basement.
the way down the building. Yes, and explosions in the basement. Thank you, Bren. That's correct. I mean, honestly, there's so much I've left out of this presentation, but I didn't include any of that, what the firemen said. I mean, and people on the street, they said they heard explosions going off, and it reminded them of those controlled demolitions, you see, where there's explosions going all the way down the building as the building collapses, because that's how they do it. That's how they bring down buildings straight down, free fall speed into their own footprints.
And DJ Mr. P said, yes, brother, explain that image. Free fall speed is over 100 miles per hour.
Yes, I mean, you're talking about, these are 110-story buildings that came down. One of them came down, I think, in about 9 seconds.
Wow.
I mean, you know, that's some serious business, man. You know, this was expertly done, because the idea wasn't to smash up the whole of New York. The idea was just to get rid of these two buildings. And I mean, oh man, we're gonna go a bit deeper, because there's a reason why these buildings had to go as well. Dear family, I hope you're good. One of the things that I noticed when researching some of these images was just how many Black people were caught up in the disaster in New York on that day. Honestly, there's so many Black people that I saw, you know, but I couldn't include all of the images, but so many of our people, obviously, you know, New York is full of Black people, but, you know, so many of our people got caught up in this on that day, and, you know, really, really suffered. Just look at that sister there. She's totally and utterly covered. And remember, you know, this ain't no lightweight thing. Imagine all that going into your lungs and everything. And like I said, there's asbestos, and there was concrete dust, and then there was all these other chemicals and substances that people would have breathed in. And there's been a lot of illnesses, long-term bronchial type illnesses that have come as a result of what people went through on that day. That day, dear family, was a living hell, and especially for the firefighters, police, and the other first responders whose duty it was to run toward the danger. Think about, you know, just look at that policeman there. He's absolutely finished, you know, exhausted, you know, probably struggling for breath. But you see, one of the reasons why I have respect for first responders is because that's their duty.
That's right.
Doesn't mean that they're even necessarily more brave than you or me, but because that's their job is to run toward danger, you see? And imagine they're going up, some of them were on their way up the stairs in these buildings when these buildings were coming down. Imagine the evil of those who planned such a thing.
God.
Just think, this is what I want you to think about
That's
tonight.
what Elijah Muhammad said, you can't
You
fathom.
cannot fathom the depth of Satan.
That's right.
You couldn't even think of doing something so evil. You see? 2,977 people dead. And that's not to talk about people who will have died as a result of that, but on later days, on other days, in other weeks, in other months, in other years, as a direct result of what they were subject to on 9/11.
I'll just read, Marvin says, a Dutch demo and expert Danny Jowenko saw a demo, called it a perfect demo. He ended up dead.
Yeah, he said it was a perfect demolition.
Yeah.
Perfect demolition. This is a demolition expert. Okay, you know, and he's not the only one. Who was the name of the person who made the comment?
Marvin Vargas.
Yeah, Marvin. Yeah, Marvin. He's not the only one. So many, just like with the Kennedy assassination, so many of the witnesses ended up dead. People who spoke out ended up dead. People, you know, like the individual that you quoted there, dead. Some mysterious deaths, you know, people falling from other buildings, and people having strange heart attacks, or people having strange automobile accidents or whatever. I mean, again, you're dealing with a satanic world. understand that anybody who's capable of doing this, don't think that they're not going to try and clean up loose ends and stop anybody from revealing or talking about what they know. Go ahead, sister. You're going to say?
It makes you think, if you really, really think, why would somebody go through all of that? Who are we as a people that somebody would want to do that? Who are Black people?
Yeah, because they, you know, again, family, we're going to have to do a show on our stolen legacy. We're going to have to do a show on our stolen identity. We're going to have to do a show on who are the real children of Israel. You see, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has dealt with that on several occasions, but no doubt we're going to have to go over it again, because you got to understand why these people are so desperate that they resort to this type of murder and mayhem and this attack against Islam, not some war against terror. Stop that nonsense. There's no war on terror. If it was a war on terror, they'd be warring against themselves, because they are the terrorists. But this is a war on Islam. Understand that Islam is the system of peace, freedom, justice, and equality. And it's the only thing that stands in the way of these people being able to maintain their hegemony of the planet and the total control and domination of the members of the human family. You see? And Almighty God Allah says, no, your time is up. And so they're fighting now, desperate to maintain their hold, their stranglehold. And they will do anything. This is what you got to understand. They will do anything.
And they don't care who else.
No, they don't care who gets hurt in the process. You got to get this idea out of your head that you're dealing with the people here who have got any kind of empathy, any kind of conscience. I keep saying it, I'm going to say it again. They are beasts in human form. You're not even dealing with a human being. See, the Bible says that they have a heart of stone. It's a beast. It's not, you're not dealing with a normal human being. You can use all manner of words to describe them. Psychopaths, okay, sociopaths. All of these names fit, because they are people who they just don't operate on a human level. Okay, their whole thing is about murder. They actually believe that they can murder their way
into the kingdom.
Yeah. This is how they think. So
I'll just read this comment from Paul Jones, who says, weren't there a large number of Jewish employees that strangely did not come in that day?
Yes, they were told, don't go to work.
Why?
They were told, I hope that's the Paul Jones that I know.
Yes.
They were told not to go to work on September the 11th, 2001. So here we can see many people desperately hanging out of windows and gaps in the walls, trying to get away from the smoke. And because of having no escape route, some of them fell to their deaths, while others jumped, and yet even more perished by being crushed to death when the building suddenly and unexpectedly fell. See, you got to understand again, those of us who were sitting watching our TV that day, we didn't expect those massive buildings to suddenly start falling down. Everybody was shocked. If you remember the newscasters, they couldn't even believe what they were seeing. What is that? How did the building just fall down? And then about an hour later, the next one comes, and they're like, because it doesn't make any sense. Those buildings were never supposed to just fall down like that, because somebody made them fall down. They were knocked down. My goodness. So, family, the story around the attack on the Pentagon is another strange one. Indeed, from the small size of the hole that supposedly was created by a 757 jet crashing into it, and the fact that there was no plane wreckage to be seen, no engines, no wings, no tail fin, no seats, no luggage, the undercarriage and the wheels, etc. All of that was missing. This is a night shot on the night after the incident. And this is where a part of the roof of the Pentagon is now collapsed. And but even then, again, you can see it's not even like where's all the plane bits? Where's all the bits of plane that should be there? It doesn't exist, family, because it wasn't a plane that hit it. And according to some who have done the research into all of this, they say that they believe it was a cruise missile that was aimed at the building that actually made that 18-foot hole and penetrated, went through the various rings of the Pentagon and went through about 2 or 3 of the rings. So this is how, this is really what happened on that day. The images for the crash site for Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, are even stranger still, with just a gorged out piece of a field with small pieces of debris scattered in the gorge and a few nearby burnt and smoking trees. But once again, no real recognizable airplane wreckage. But this is, they've made movies about Flight 93 and where's the plane? When you see plane crashes, you can always see bits of the plane. Where's the engines? Where's the wheels? Where's the tail? Where's the wings? My God. Where's the seats? Where are the dead bodies? And one of the explanations that they tried to give was that this plane literally buried itself in the earth.
Oh, really?
My God. But you see, they take the people as fools. Yeah. They take the people as fools. You know, and people like me, we're just conspiracy theorists. Oh, Allah. Now, as an illustration of how these governments insult the intelligence of the people, after the FBI confiscated all the CCTV images from all the public and even private place around the Pentagon complex, this is the video of the 757 jetliner crashing into the building on 9/11 that they were finally forced to release after relentless public pressure. So understand this. They're not showing nothing. People are saying, well, hold on. Well, you must have images of the plane hitting the Pentagon. So the people are pressuring months, I think it was years before they released this. And finally, they released a video. They said that this is the only video that they captured of this plane hitting one of the most surveillanced buildings in the world. But this is the only video that they could find of the plane, a 757. This is a massive jetliner passenger plane. This is the only video that they could find of the plane hitting the Pentagon. Dear family, please watch the video and tell me where you see any plane hitting any building in this video. Where's the plane? Where's the plane? Big explosion. You saw something come in, most definitely. But you're trying to tell me that was a 757 and nothing remains of it? Telling you, family, man, honestly, we got to wake up. Let me see. I think it shows it again. Let's have a look, because I want you to look.
I missed that.
Look, yeah. Well, you're gonna miss it because it's not a plane. Look. There you go. Look. Imagine. This is what they take the public as fools. Look. This is before. Look. Watch it coming. Look. What's that? Where's the plane? It's a missile. A missile. You see, even if a plane is moving at 500 plus miles an hour, you're going to see the plane. It's too big to be lost in vapor. It's right after it's happened. Where's the plane? Where's the bits of plane everywhere? this demon here. I mean, honest.
Well, hopefully it will put to rest some of the conspiracy theories about September 11th. Also, it's important that there be...
You hear what this man is saying? He's saying he's hoping that this video that they've just released will put to rest some of the conspiracy theories. I mean, honestly, look at him. Just look at him.
Well, hopefully it will put to rest some of the conspiracy theories about September 11th. Also, it's important that there be a complete record for history. And it also serves as a useful reminder about the terrible nature of the terrorist threat we face as a country.
So, have your doubts and fears been put to rest, family?
Well, it's important that people understand that Flight 77 was used as a weapon against the Pentagon, and many, many people died. The suggestion has been that our government was involved in that. And hopefully this video puts all that to rest.
Man's actually laughing. Hopefully this video puts that to rest. Yeah, what's so funny? What are you laughing about? What are you giggling about as you're trying to justify the unjustifiable? Listen to this.
Rest.
Family, I hope that we really understand and, as we reflect on this 22-year history and understand that, as a result of this foundation that was erected on that occasion, this is why the world is in the terrible condition that it's in today, because somebody has been building on these lies.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of what really happened on 9/11 is so sinister, it beggars belief. And don't be surprised if this episode of the Image of Nation show is censored in one way or another by YouTube, because they and others work very hard, family, to keep this kind of truth hidden from the public. They really don't want you to see what we're showing you tonight.
It was widely reported that men had been celebrating the attack after recording the first plane strike. They were not Al-Qaeda, but they were detained.
I grabbed my binoculars and I could see the towers from my window. And this is where I'm looking. And all of a sudden, down there, I see this van park. And I see 3 guys on top of the van. And I could see that they were like happy. They didn't look shocked to me. They didn't look shocked.
There was a group of Israelis, some of whom later were revealed as Mossad assets, who were arrested after cheering and high-fiving and videotaping the crash of...
Are you listening? Are you listening? The woman is looking out of her window, overlooking the what's happening on 9/11, and there are a group of men celebrating, high-fiving, videotaping on top of the van, enjoying themselves over what's just happened with these airplanes flying into buildings. And who are they? Mossad operatives, Israeli Secret Service, family. They may take down this video after this goes out on the internet this evening. Understand what we're dealing with here.
Israelis, some of whom later were revealed as Mossad assets, who were arrested after cheering and high-fiving and videotaping the crash of the airplanes into the World Trade Towers.
Several other men were detained after a van full of explosives was stopped outside of Manhattan.
Earlier, we had heard that an FBI spokesperson said that there was a report on the George Washington Bridge, which is another facility which you folks are responsible for policing, a report that there had been a van stopped there that had explosives.
Asked this week about another sprawling investigation and the detention of 60 Israelis since September 11th, the Bush administration...
Don't forget now, they are finding a van full of explosives. These guys had a van full of explosives. And by the way, there was 2 vans, because sometimes they're talking about a van that was stopped on a particular bridge, the van that the woman saw. but there was 2 vans. One of them was full of explosives. And these Israelis were the ones who were in charge of both of these white vans. Please listen, family. Please listen on 9/11.
And treated the questions like hot potatoes.
I would just refer you to the Department of Justice with it. I'm not familiar with the report.
I'm aware that some Israelis.
This is reporters asking the American government spokespersons, Colin Powell, about these Israelis who have been arrested, who were cheering on 9/11, and Colin Powell and this Pentagon spokesperson, they're running away from the question. Have you been witnessing what's been going on in Palestine recently, and how these American spokespeople, they can't say nothing against Israel? I just want you to understand something, that when we're talking about the coming of God and the end times, you better understand that Israel is at the epicenter of this situation that unfolds in this day and time. You see? And that you got to understand the role that this nation that has been implanted in the center of the Middle East is playing in this unfolding of the end times of the Western world, and how it is integral to this white supremacist satanic world, and that these people, they are not allowed to say anything against Israel. They cannot criticize Israel, even when Israelis are caught in the act. I want you to just imagine for a minute that this was a group of black men celebrating and clapping on 9/11. I want you to imagine for a minute that this was a group of Arabs celebrating and clapping. See, but listen to the way in which, the mealy mouth way in which they're dealing with vans of explosives and people being caught red-handed doing some evil on the day. But look at the way they're dealing with it. Go ahead, Sister.
If it was black people, that we would have been shot.
Oh, you'd been shot on the spot, shot outright. I gotta go back, but I messed up. I accidentally came off of the. Gotta go back. How do I go back? Gotta go back, family. 1 second. One second. I hope you are all right, dear family. We are coming close to the end, but I've got to go back. I didn't mean to.
Right, I'll just read this. This
Yep.
is from Khalid Hassan. He said, another great form of supportive evidence towards this topic is the documentary called Loose Change 9/11.
Yes.
First, second, and third edition. DJ Mr. P said, with all those cameras on the Pentagon, is that the only video they have? Where is the debris? It looked like a missile entering from the right of the screen. Them
What was he saying?
Them
Them tech with a fool.
Right.
Yeah, you can't say it because you're from Dominica, you're not Jamaican. Them tech with a fool. I know exactly what you're saying, DJ Mr. P. Them tech with a fool. Right, let me see if I can get back to this because I accidentally came off of it, but we gotta.
A report on the George Washington Bridge, which is another facility which you folks are responsible for policing. A report that there had been a van stopped there that had explosives.
Asked this week about another sprawling investigation and the detention of 60 Israelis since September 11th, the Bush administration treated the questions like hot potatoes.
I would just refer you to the Department of Justice with it. I'm not familiar with the report.
I'm aware that some Israeli citizens have been detained. With respect to why they are being detained and the other aspects of your question, whether it's because they are in intelligence services or what they were doing, I will defer to the Department of Justice and the FBI to answer that
On March 6, 2002, a draft report from the DEA said it may well be an organized intelligence gathering activity. Despite all of this, all the Israelis were let go without any espionage charges being filed.
Are you listening, family?
Fox News anchors Britt Hume and Carl Cameron would do a 4-part investigation into these allegations in December of 2001 and yield stunning results.
It has been more than 16 years since a civilian working for the Navy was charged with passing secrets to Israel. Jonathan Pollard pled guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage and is serving a life sentence. At first, Israeli leaders claimed Pollard was part of a rogue operation, but later took responsibility for his work. Now, Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S.
Since September 11th, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained, either under the new Patriot anti-terrorism law or for immigration violations. A handful of active Israeli military were among those detained, according to investigators, who say some of the detainees also failed polygraph questions when asked about alleged surveillance activities against and in the United States.
So they gave them lie detector tests, and they failed the lie detector test. Okay, Mossad agents cheering on 9/11. And by the way, I hope you're listening to what they're investigating. Investigating it for spying. But what about your van full of explosives? Why are you at 9/11? See? Because even then, they're still not even looking at these people for what the fact that they're a part of this, bringing down these buildings on this day. That's why you're filming and you're cheering and you're high-fiving, but you want to talk to them about espionage, about spying on America. You see these people? My goodness, family.
Suspect that the Israelis may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. A highly placed investigator said there
may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. See these people? You think these people don't know that these are the people who actually involved in bringing down these buildings and actually perpetrating the actual crimes of 9/11? But they want to make out that, oh, well, they were maybe just spying. They were just Mossad agents spying and they knew about it, but they didn't tell the Americans. You see how these people are? Because you got to understand the relationship between Israel and America. They are one and the same. They and it looks like they run America. This is what you got to understand, because I've never seen a country so fearful of even criticizing these people. Netanyahu, when you saw when Netanyahu came the other day, speaking to both houses of Congress and literally getting I think 58 times they jumped to their feet to give him standing ovation while the man is in the middle of committing a genocide. And while the United Nations highest court has already asked for arrest warrants, a war criminal, and they're there every time this man opens his mouth and says some nonsensical, satanic utterance, they're jumping up and clapping. Yeah. Man, I'm telling you, you better wake up, family. We better wake up.
Tie-ins, but when asked for details, he flatly refused to describe them, saying, quote, "Evidence linking these Israelis to 9/11 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It's classified information." Now,
are you listening? They can't talk about the Israelis who were arrested because it's classified. Wow. Again, can you imagine a group of Arabs being arrested and it's classified? Can you imagine a group of black people? Can you imagine anybody else? Can you imagine even a group of American white people? But it's classified. They can't talk about it. See?
Israelis to 9/11 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It's classified information.
Now, when the FBI investigated, it quickly unraveled to be the largest foreign spy ring ever uncovered inside the United States, the largest. Even the Soviet Union had not been spying on the United States as much as Israel has.
Did you hear that? Even the Soviet Union has not spied on America like the Israelis. That's how many operatives they've got in America in all of the different places. This is what the FBI and other agencies are discovering about Israel's level of infiltration into America. And it's not just talking about Israelis living in America, it's talking about infiltrating into their government systems, into their military, into everything. So is that spying, or is that just a part of the whole process that they're actually running things? Family, please listen.
Been doing. So the FBI started to round up these spies. They started to arrest them very quietly, and they were about halfway through this process of rounding up this spy ring when 9/11 happened.
Numerous classified documents obtained by Fox News indicate that even prior to September 11th, as many as 140 other Israelis had been detained or arrested in a secretive and sprawling investigation into suspected espionage by Israelis in the United States. Investigators from numerous government agencies are part of a working group that's been compiling evidence since the mid-90s. These documents detail hundreds of incidents in cities and towns across the country that investigators say, quote, may well be an organized intelligence gathering activity. The first part of the investigation focuses on Israelis who say they are art students from the University of Jerusalem and Bezalel Academy. Documents say they, quote, targeted and penetrated military bases, the DEA, FBI, and dozens of other government facilities, and even secret offices and unlisted private homes of law enforcement and intelligence personnel.
Are you looking at the list of these places and peoples that they've infiltrated, that the Israelis have basically penetrated all of these targets? Have you seen the list of the so-called targets, family? What's going on here? Why are these people allowed to do what they do with impunity? Why do you think they can kill Palestinians and assassinate, targeted assassinations left, right, and center all over the world, and nobody appears to be able to do anything or say anything against them? Did you hear what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was saying earlier? How everybody is then labeled as anti-Semitic if they dare to criticize these evil people for what they do? My God.
They are art students from the University of Jerusalem and Bezalel Academy. Documents say they, quote, targeted and penetrated military bases, the DEA, FBI, and dozens of other government facilities, and even secret offices and unlisted private homes of law enforcement and intelligence personnel. The majority of those questioned, quote,
by the way, you do realize that they are like the #1 trainers of the FBI in America, that they train most of America's law enforcement. These are the Israelis. It's a joke. It is a joke, family. It really is. Well, if it wasn't so absolutely tragic in terms of what is happening to America and this world, and the fact that they're finished, you see, because the Israelis, they're finished. This behavior that God has identified and exposed, they're finished. It's only a matter of time, because this is now the exposure of the root of all evil on our planet.
They served in military intelligence, electronic surveillance intercept, and/or explosive ordnance units. Why would Israelis spy in and on the U.S.? A General Accounting Office investigation referred to Israel as Country A and said, quote, according to a U.S. intelligence agency, the government of Country A conducts the most aggressive espionage operation against the U.S. of any U.S. ally. The document concludes, quote, Israel possesses the resources and technical capability to achieve its collection objectives.
What about this question of advanced knowledge of what was going to happen on 9/11? How clear are investigators that some Israeli agents may have known something?
Well, it's very explosive information, obviously, and there's a great deal of evidence that they say they have collected, none of it necessarily conclusive. It's more when they put it all together. A bigger question, they say, is how could they not have known? Almost a direct quote, Brett.
It is now apparent that this intelligence ring was inside the U.S., had prior knowledge of 9/11, and had a classified role in 9/11, which officials refused to discuss. It was also
they
able
had prior knowledge, and they had a classified role in 9/11. They were part of it.
Penetrate U.S. intelligence agencies and secret offices, yet all were released. The men who were detained due to the report they were taping the first plane crash and then celebrating and joking about it actually went on television and admitted it was their job to record the attack.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
How could they have known about the attack? And who sent them?
Our purpose was to document the attack. So you knew about it beforehand. That's the point. My God. Honestly, they do take the people for absolute fools.
Our purpose was to document the event.
How could they have known about the attack? And who sent them to document it? The evidence points to a large intelligence network inside the United States that had teams on the ground, such as the ones recording the attack, and electronic surveillance teams gathering information.
Family, we're right at the end. We're right at the end. I do pray that, you know, I do apologize once again for going a bit long, but you see, honestly, it's just very difficult to make short of these things. There's just too much. And I cut out 16 hours of information that I could have shared with you today. It's just too much. Let us now return to the #1 truth teller on our planet, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as he continues to pose a series of pertinent questions that, if answered truthfully, would expose the fact that we live in a world governed by a wicked enemy operating from a satanic mind. Satan is not under the ground, brothers and sisters, family. Satan is very real, very active, and is about to be crushed by Almighty God Allah for his wickedness.
Who is the original man? Before the beginning, after the ending, my brother, I am the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe.
Let's go to the World Trade Center. We're talking about the synagogue of Satan. 6 months before the 9/11 attacks, the World Trade Center was purchased by the Silverstein Group. I guess by that name, you might know that Mr. Silverstein might claim to be Jewish. But he bought the World Trade Center for $3.2 billion, even though the building, when it was built, was built full of asbestos, and it would take darn near that amount of money to destroy the building and clean it. Larry Silverstein took out insurance coverage on the property, which fortuitously covered acts of terrorism. The total potential payout is $4.6 billion, and Mr. Silverstein has been paid. The result of a court ruling, Silverstein makes a huge profit off of the 9/11 attacks. And if you follow the money, you'll begin to see the synagogue of Satan at work. Now, George W. Bush's brother was a director, and his cousin was the CEO of the security firm responsible for the electronic security network of the World Trade Center prior to and during 9/11.
Bush's brother, Jeb.
At least one security guard at the World Trade Center reported the abrupt removal of explosive sniffing dogs 5 days prior to 9/11.
Listen.
Isn't that interesting? Let's go on. No steel-framed building before or since 9/11 has ever collapsed due to fire. The World Trade Center buildings were designed to withstand the impact of airlines because they were at that time the tallest buildings in the world. The melting point of steel is about 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature of jet fuel fires does not exceed 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit.
Listen.
So the buildings cannot have collapsed due to heat from the fires. Why were people seen in the gaps left by the plane impacts if the heat from the fires behind them was so excessive? Listen, why were there two distinct spikes, one for each tower, seen in seismic records before the...
Do you understand that, family? There were two spikes that were shown. This is the heaviness of the explosions that were operating to bring down these towers. There were two seismic, this is how you measure earthquakes, seismic spikes that were shown, okay? That literally these, there were explosions. That's the point. At the point of the base of these buildings that started to bring these buildings down. That's called evidence.
One for each tower, seen in seismic records before the towers collapsed. How could the World Trade Center towers collapse in free fall speed? Only 11 seconds for World Trade Center 1 and 9 seconds for World Trade Center 2, speeds that approximate that of a ball dropped from similar height with no air resistance. Why did so many people, including the New York Fire Department, report hearing many explosions at street level prior to the towers falling? Who were those men on top of a van with a tripod and camera across the Hudson River filming the towers before the first plane hit? How did they know to be there? And why were they celebrating? The police arrested them and let them go into Israeli custody.
Wow.
Why? Now, building number 7, a 47-story skyscraper and part of the World Trade Center complex was not struck by a plane, but it collapsed in 6.5 seconds at 5:20 p.m. on September the 11th in the exact manner of a controlled demolition. Why was the U.S. military explosive thermate found in the dust of the World Trade Centers? Now you might say, well, all right.
This is a thermite. Nanothermite is a military grade explosive component that is used in controlled demolitions to cut through steel. And they say that it cuts through steel like a knife through butter, like a hot knife through butter. Thermite. And this thermite, this nanothermite, little spheres were found in the dust of 9/11 in the aftermath. It was saturated all over the place, showing you that this military grade nanothermite was used in the bringing down of those buildings. Family, we're nearly there.
Let's see if our government lies and does things and takes innocent life for other purposes. This is the end of my lecture today. Did you know that the United States wanted control over Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Guam? So President William McKinley lied about an explosion on board the USS Maine, anchored in Havana Harbor, that killed 260 American servicemen.
Kill their own.
They said Spain did it, but they offered no evidence. And because of that war, the Spanish-American War, the U.S. gained control over Cuba and the Philippines and Puerto Rico, Cuba in particular, so that the island could be open to United Fruit Company and other American corporations. Did Lyndon Baines Johnson lie to get us into a major war in Vietnam? The official story was that the North Vietnamese torpedo boats launched an unprovoked attack against a U.S. destroyer on routine patrol in the Tonkin Gulf on August 2nd, 1964, and that the communists followed up with a deliberate attack 2 days later. None of this was true.
Listen to the deception, family.
President Lyndon Baines Johnson used the fabricated incident to justify a momentous escalation in the war, ultimately leading to over 56,000 American deaths and millions of Vietnamese casualties. Now, when John Fitzgerald Kennedy was the president, Castro was in power in Cuba, and they wanted to invade Cuba. Did you know that there was a memo from the Pentagon to the president? We could develop a communist Cuban terror campaign in the Miami area, in other Florida cities, and even in Washington. We could blow up a U.S. ship in Guantanamo Bay, the American military base in Cuba, and blame Cuba. Casualty lists in U.S. newspapers would cause a helpful wave of national indignation. Later, the Pentagon even suggested attacking Jamaica or Trinidad and Tobago and making it look as if the Cubans were responsible, hoping this might force Britain into a war on Fidel Castro. This is America. They don't care nothing about human life when it stands in the way of a political and economic objective. Now, brothers and sisters, you know there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But look how many Americans, black, brown, and white, have lost their lives on the basis of a lie.
Deception.
And so, my dear brothers and sisters, your blood is off of my hands.
Family, thank you. I really want to thank you. And once again, I do apologize for, the length of time that we take to get through all of this information, but it's really very, very important. Let me say greetings to James Bradley. I know you're in New York right now. Brother says he's right underneath the World Trade Center right now watching this. Praise be to Allah. Good to hear from you, dear brother. Thank you so much, dear family, for all of your comments and all of your input
which we do
this
read.
evening. And we do read every single comment.
And Ronald Thompson, we will maybe perhaps go into his.
Yeah, Brother Simon is encouraging me to do Who Are the Real Children of Israel? Most definitely, Brother Simon, we will be looking at that very, very soon, inshallah. Thank you, dear family. I pray that you really got it tonight and that we are moving steadily toward, real knowledge, wisdom, and understanding about the time that we're living in and what must be done. Thank you. May Allah bless each and every one of you as I greet you, as I found you in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Sister Claudia.
Yes, these meetings are to encourage us to separate from this world. First, we have to separate mentally, then physically. So don't forget to tune in to Final Call Radio, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Feed on the word of God. Also subscribe to the Final Call newspaper. We need to hear the truth instead of these newspapers always drilling it into our minds, all the lies that they tell. So, and go on to NOI.org. There's hundreds of lectures from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. As I said before, there's no excuse today for not knowing the truth. It's all there. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your comments in the comment section. We do read them afterwards. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. May Almighty God Allah protect and guide you all and your families. Have a blessed day wherever you are on the planet Earth. Thank you so much for tuning in, and God willing, inshallah, I hope to see you all next week. Take care. Have a blessed evening or morning.